The great hall of the Galactic tribunal shimmered with cold light, a cathedral of polished crystal and silver that stretched toward a ceiling so high it was lost in shadow. Hundreds of alien delegates sat in curving tiers, their eyes, compound or luminous or scaled, fixed upon the single dais at the center. Suspended above the chamber was the projection, the execution of human children, replayed again and again, a warning and a boast. Small bodies wrapped in ragged clothes, a firing line of armored soldiers, a final cry swallowed by silence. The Empire had insisted to be shown on loop, so that every species could learn the lesson. Defiance would be met with extinction at its roots. The delegates murmured approval, though beneath the polished voices ran unease. It was not the killing itself that unsettled them. The Empire had slain children before. It was that the humans had yet to react as expected. For days now, the galaxy had watched. They had waited for wailing, for surrender, for the desperate crawl to mercy. Instead, there had been stillness. Funeral hymns sung under starlight. A planet full of candles burning in windows, each flame a name. Silence and song, no pleading, no begging. It was disquieting. Into that silence stepped Commander Jameson Hale. He entered as if he were late for coffee with friends, not the reckoning of his entire species. His dark hair was streaked with gray, his suit tailored but plain, the kind of man one could forget at a glance. Yet his presence filled the room like an unseen tide. In his hands, absurdly, he carried a tray of pastries, still steaming, and 2 thermoses strapped with mismatched ribbons. The guards looked at him in confusion as he set the tray on the polished table before the Velthorian arbiter, a crystalline being who refracted light in sharp angles. Thought the session would run long, Hale said with a mild smile. His voice was low, unhurried, the tone of a man at peace with small talk. Figured you all might want something sweet. Cinnamon twists. Family recipe. A ripple of murmurs broke across the chamber. The arbiter tilted its faceted head, voice like breaking glass. You presume to bring confections into the tribunal of law. Hospitality, Hale replied softly, pouring coffee into delicate cups, as though he were in a kitchen, not under threat of annihilation. On Earth, we've a custom. When you host guests, you feed them, even if they've just slaughtered your kin. The Ingwan general, massive and scaled in green-black armor, released a sound between a growl and a laugh. Primitive rituals. You serve sugar and water in the face of imperial judgment. This is your resistance. Hale's eyes flicked toward him, steady, unblinking. Oh, General, we've resisted empires before. Sometimes with sugar, sometimes with steel. Depends on the taste of the day. The laughter faltered. The chamber's light dimmed as the projection restarted. Again, the children fell. Again, silence followed. Hale did not look away. His hand rested lightly on the table, fingers tapping once, twice, as though to mark the beat of an old song. You replay their deaths as spectacle, he said quietly, not raising his voice above the hum of the projection. But where I come from, we don't end songs at the silence. We carry them on. The insectoid Karken archivist clicked mandibles in irritation. You speak of songs while your species stands at the edge of eradication. The Empire has killed your young to instill obedience. What lesson do you take? Hale's smile was almost kind. That you've mistaken silence for fear. And that's a dangerous mistake. The words settled into the air like frost. The delegates shifted, some scoffing, some uneasy. The arbiter leaned forward, crystalline joints grinding. Commander Hale, are you here to negotiate your species' surrender? Surrender. Hale lifted his brows, as though surprised at the suggestion. He opened a leather-bound book, worn at the edges. In neat rows, names had been inscribed by hand, each marked with a candle's flame pressed into the paper. We're here to remember. That's what makes us dangerous. We never forget the names. He set the book on the table with quiet finality. The alien delegates leaned forward, confused, compelled. Hale poured himself coffee, the steam curling upward. He sipped, sighed as if savoring comfort. You want me to beg, to weep, to tremble. But you misunderstand what happens when you kill our children. His eyes flicked toward the projection, where the bodies fell again in slow motion. You don't make us afraid. You make us patient. The Ingwan general snarled, voice echoing through the chamber. Empty words. You are weak, scattered, a fledgling species playing its strength. The empire is eternal. Eternal. Hale chuckled softly, shaking his head. Every empire thinks that, right until the barbarians are at the gate. On Earth, we have a saying. If you want to test a man's character, give him power. If you want to test a species' fate, kill their children. The crystalline arbiter slammed a shard-like hand upon the dais, sending a sharp crack through the chamber. Enough riddles. Humanity stands trial. You will state your terms of submission, or you will be erased. Hale leaned back, folding his hands loosely. Terms? Certainly. I've written some down. He slid a datapad across the table, as though passing a grocery list. The arbiter seized it, projecting the contents across the chamber. At first glance, the demands seemed absurdly mild. Return of human prisoners. Access to frontier trade routes. A ban on civilian executions. The delegates murmured with scorn. Too soft. Too small. Surely this species was broken. But beneath the surface, coded into innocuous clauses, ran hidden patterns. Staggered fleet deployments disguised as shipping schedules, encrypted channels masked as trade tariffs, false navigational beacons embedded in treaty language. To the untrained eye, meaningless bureaucratic noise. To those who knew, a map of traps already laid. Hale sipped his coffee again, watching them squint at the text. We like to keep things tidy, he murmured. Paperwork saves lives. The Karken archivist buzzed in agitation. Your kind plays at cleverness. But numbers do not lie. The Empire has 1,000 fleets. You have a handful of rusted warships. You cannot. Outnumbered, Hale interrupted gently, setting down his cup. His eyes gleamed with something colder than steel. General truth about us. We've always been outnumbered. It's why we're so very good at winning. Silence held the chamber for a long breath. The projection replayed again, children falling. Hale did not look away, his face unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost tender. You want to teach us fear. But we've lived with fear for centuries. Fear of famine. Fear of plague. Fear of extinction. The thing you don't understand is that fear doesn't break us. It hones us. He closed the leather book with care, sliding it back into his coat. Every candle we light, every hymn we sing, every name we write, it's not surrender, it's sharpening. The Ingwan general shifted uneasily. The arbiter refracted light in jagged pulses, confusion flickering like cracks. Hale stood slowly, collecting the tray of untouched pastries, tucking them under one arm. His smile remained gentle, almost apologetic. One more earth saying, he offered as he turned toward the exit. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Sometimes the smile is just teeth in hiding. The chamber watched him go, his footsteps echoing across the polished floor. He did not look back at the projection, though its light spilled across him like blood. At the threshold, he paused, glanced over his shoulder, and added in that same calm voice, "You've mistaken silence for fear. And silence is the last warning you'll get." The door closed behind him with a hush that felt louder than any gunfire. The delegates shifted, unease curdling into dread. In the stillness, the looped projection continued to play. But now, for the first time, the watching galaxy did not see children dying. They saw a spark. And in the eyes of Commander Jameson Hale, they had seen the smile of a predator who had just decided the hunt had begun. The first clash did not come in fire and fury, but in silence. Out on the ragged edge of the Empire's frontier, where trade routes stretched thin and the stars themselves seemed weary, a Velthorian patrol ship drifted into the orbit of a small human colony. The reports had said the world was abandoned, stripped bare after the executions broadcast across the galaxy. What they found instead was a town that looked untouched, barns upright, crops standing golden, toys scattered in dust. A picture of stillness, as if the humans had vanished between one heartbeat and the next. Captain Sereth of the Velthorian fleet surveyed the ghost settlement through crystalline optics. Primitive fools fled at the first rumor of reprisal, he remarked. his voice echoing like glass bells across the command deck. They left their playthings behind. How fitting that we display their toys as trophies. He gestured toward the surface. Bring me one. A squad descended in armor that glimmered with refracted light, striding across the dirt street of the abandoned town. They kicked aside dolls, overturned rocking chairs, crushed wooden figurines beneath boots. One soldier stooped to lift a child stuffed bear, its stitched smile crooked with age. He laughed, raising it high for the patrol ship's camera feed. In that instant, the bear's eyes blinked red. The signal shot skyward. In orbit, hidden beneath the electromagnetic static of the colony's weather arrays, 3 human submarines stirred. They were not ships as the galaxy knew them, but retrofitted leviathans of Earth steel, bristling with weapons scavenged and welded with almost careless ingenuity. When the bear's signal reached them, they rose as one from concealment, silent predators breaching into attack formation. The Velthorian patrol barely had time to scream. Commander Jameson Hale watched the explosion from a distance, his ship disguised as a cargo hauler on the edge of the system. He sipped coffee, the mug warm in his weathered hands, while his crew held their breath. Through the viewport, the Velthorian vessel bloomed into fragments, shards of crystal scattering like fallen stars. Hale exhaled slowly, as though the destruction were nothing more than a campfire guttering out. First lesson delivered, he murmured, setting the mug down. His voice carried no triumph, only a calm certainty. Now we see if they study their homework. The galaxy did not understand the human way of war. It expected overwhelming charges, desperate pleas, the flailing of a smaller species trying to prove itself. Instead, humans set traps. They built patience into their fury. Every toy abandoned, every hymn sung, every silence held was a thread in a web the Empire had walked into without seeing. When the tribunal heard of the patrol's destruction, laughter erupted among the delegates. A lucky strike, the Karken archivist chirped, mandibles clacking. A trick. They cannot repeat such fortune. But beneath the dismissive words, tension coiled. Fortune was not supposed to favor primitives. The next clash erased the idea of luck. On the forest moon of Kelthas, an Empire garrison of 5,000 soldiers found their supply depot looted. The crates that remained contained only children's toys, wooden horses, marbles, jump ropes, each tagged with a neat number. Confused, the officers cataloged them. Hours later, every numbered toy broadcast a pulse that triangulated the entire garrison's location to orbit. Human ships rained fire like storm clouds splitting the sky. The garrison never sent a second message. Reports filtered back to the tribunal. Human forces were using artifacts of grief as weapons. The children's dolls and marbles became tools of war, each one a beacon of vengeance. The effect was psychological as much as tactical. Soldiers began to hesitate before stepping into abandoned homes. Every toy became a threat, every silent cradle a snare. What once was meant to humiliate the humans now humiliated their conquerors. The Ingwan general pounded a scaled fist onto the tribunal table. They mock us with playthings. They turn mourning into strategy. This is not war, it is madness. Madness. Hale asked gently from his seat, pouring himself tea this time. On Earth, we call it memory. And memory makes better weapons than steel. The general sneered, teeth glinting. You mock death with games. Do you not fear war? Hale looked at him steadily, his gray eyes calm as a winter sea. General, we do not fear war. We fear forgetting why we fight. That's why we carry the memory of children into battle. Every toy is a tombstone. Every tombstone is a signal flare. And every flare draws us closer to the heart of your empire. The word spread through the chamber like a quiet contagion. Some scoffed, but others shifted uncomfortably, their alien bodies betraying unease. They could not understand a species that transmuted mourning into stratagem. They could not fathom a people who refused despair, who lit candles instead of waving white flags. The confusion only deepened as human fleets revealed more quirks. Before battle, they broadcast music, discordant guitars, pounding drums, old recordings of heavy metal and gospel choirs alike. Alien comm officers covered auditory receptors, baffled. "Do humans mock death with noise?" one asked bitterly. Hale smiled faintly. "No. We mock your confidence. That's different." In one skirmish, a Velthorian fleet entered orbit around a supposed rebel base. They found it deserted. But as they broadcast jeers across open comms, the surrounding mountains lit up. Thousands of speakers hidden in cliffs, blaring recordings of children laughing. The laughter echoed through space, feeding into the Velthorians' own comms. Moments later, explosives buried in the mountains detonated, collapsing entire ranges onto the fleet's landing zones. The Velthorians retreated in chaos, chased not by soldiers, but by echoes of children's voices that would not stop ringing in their crystalline minds. Confusion grew. The tribunal called session after session, trying to explain the unexplainable. The Karken archivist rattled through numbers, insisting humans lacked the ships to sustain such victories. The Velthorian arbiter claimed the engagements were fabrications. The Ingwan general muttered that perhaps humans had gods on their side. None dared say the truest thing, that perhaps the humans were simply better predators. Hale attended every session with unflappable calm. Some days he brought donuts. Other days, small flowers pressed into wax paper. He spoke little, but when asked directly, his words sliced sharper than fleets. When an alien sneered that humans must know they were hopelessly outnumbered, he folded his hands and replied with the same gentle smile, "We've always been outnumbered. It's why we're so very good at winning." Behind the humor ran grief like an undertow. Hale carried a small silver locket in his pocket, worn smooth by touch. He never opened it in public, but late at night, in the dim quarters of his disguised ship, he would turn it over and over in his hand, staring at the projection of a girl's face, brown hair, shy smile, eyes too young to be gone. His niece, one of the children executed. His smile in public was armor. In private, the grief was steel sharpening to a knife edge. The human strategy was not only weapons and traps. It was theater. It was irony sharpened to terror. They named operations with jokes, Operation Welcome Mat, an ambush disguised as hospitality, Project Babysitter, a fleet hidden behind civilian transports, Widowmaker, a trap laid with the names of slain mothers etched into every missile's casing. To the galaxy, it seemed insanity. To humans, it was poetry. The first confusion gave way to the first whispers of fear. Empire soldiers began to request reassignment away from human sectors. Some muttered that the toys watched them at night. Others swore they heard hymns in static, as if the humans had taught even radio waves to grieve. The arbiter demanded answers. Hale offered none, only the quiet reassurance of a man who had already set the board. "You want us broken," he said softly in one closed session. "But broken things cut sharper when you try to sweep them away." The Ingwan general growled, leaning close across the table. "You cannot hope to stand against the 1,000 fleets of the Empire. You have no allies, no numbers, no mercy." Hale's expression did not change. "Mercy is for those who show restraint. You showed none. So now we sharpen memory into teeth. And when the teeth close, you will remember what fear tastes like." The general snarled but did not reply. Around the chamber, silence thickened. Some alien delegates looked at Hale and no longer saw a diplomat with coffee and pastries. They saw something older, something that smiled while setting snares. The reports from the frontier kept coming. More patrols vanished. More colonies found abandoned but humming with hidden signals. And always, always, the quiet song of humans carrying their dead forward. A galaxy that had thought humans soft began to understand. This was not softness. This was the calm of hunters who waited for the perfect moment. In his quarters that night, Hale marked another name in the leather book, his pen steady, his face expressionless. He closed the book, set it beside the cooling mug of coffee, and whispered into the empty room. "They think the confusion is a mistake. They don't see it's the plan." Outside the viewport, the stars burned indifferent. But somewhere out there, fleets were moving. Fleets hidden in plain sight. fleets disguised as traitors, fleets waiting for a signal only Hale knew. Humanity's war was not reaction. It was choreography. And when the music began in earnest, the galaxy would learn that humans were not dancing partners. They were the ones who chose when the lights went out. The first time the aliens heard the roar of a human machine gun, they thought it was music. The reports from the Ingwan outpost on Vela Prime described it as a rolling thunder, metallic and relentless, like the galaxy itself tearing open. They had marched into the settlement expecting silence and surrender. What they found instead was a handful of humans, dug into rubble, grinning through soot as if they'd been waiting for this moment all their lives. When the guns opened fire, the Empire learned that humans did not merely fight with weapons, they sang with them. The sound carried across the battlefield in bursts, staccato sermons of steel. Each round was a note, each volley a verse, and the chorus was slaughter. The Velthorian officer who survived called it the machine gun gospel. His crystalline body cracked from shrapnel. He stumbled back into the tribunal months later, still trembling from echoes. "They do not fight to win ground," he rasped. "They fight to tell us a story. And the story says, we will never be afraid." Commander Jameson Hale had orchestrated it all. He stood at the edge of the battlefield, his coat dusted with ash, hands clasped behind him. To his soldiers, he spoke like a preacher before a congregation, calm and measured. "They think fear will break us. Let them hear instead what patience sounds like when it wakes up angry. Let them hear the gospel." The guns thundered and the aliens broke. But Hale's face remained grave, as if each pull of a trigger was another name written in his hidden book. His smile was rare that day, appearing only when the Velthorians charged and were cut down, their arrogance drowned by rhythm. "See," he murmured to a young lieutenant, "they mistake noise for chaos. But in noise there's order. That's why music terrifies them. They can't tell if it's joy or grief. For us, it's both." Word of the battle spread like a contagion. Alien worlds whispered about the humans who laughed under bombardment, who painted hymns onto their helmets, who named their rifles after children. Confusion gave way to fear. The tribunal demanded new strategies, but the reports contradicted themselves. One officer claimed humans fought like lunatics, charging through fire with songs. Another swore they fought with chilling patience, lying in silence until the moment they struck. The truth was simpler and worse. Humans fought with both. They shifted like water, like predators who studied prey and changed shape for the perfect kill. Hale played the contradiction carefully. Before the tribunal he remained courteous, even disarmingly gentle. He brought books of earth poetry to share, quoting lines about dawn and rivers as if war were far away. But always beneath his words was the echo of guns, the reminder of the gospel that now haunted alien ears. In one closed session, the arbiter demanded explanation. "Your weapons," the crystalline judge hissed, "are crude, archaic. Yet they tear through our fleets. How does your rust defy our brilliance?" Hale poured himself coffee, steady hands betraying no nerves. "Because brilliance gets comfortable," he said. "Rust, though rust survives. It teaches us patience. It teaches us to endure." He looked around the chamber, voice softening. "Every empire falls. The question is whether it falls with a scream or with a hymn. We've already chosen our hymn." The Karken archivist shuddered, antennae twitching. "You use music, laughter, ritual. Why cloak slaughter in art?" "Because art outlives bullets," Hale replied. "And we mean for you to remember this long after the last round's fired." The next battlefield proved the point. On the mining world of Terralis, human resistance fighters lured 3 Empire battalions into a canyon. The aliens expected traps, but none came. Instead, speakers hidden in the rocks began to play an old earth hymn, low and haunting. "Amazing Grace," the translation file called it. The aliens hesitated, confused. Then the cliffs erupted in fire as humans opened up with weapons older than the Empire itself, machine guns rattling like drums of judgment. In the smoke, human soldiers advanced, singing the very hymn that had lured the enemy in. Those who survived swore the song still followed them into sleep. The Ingwan general returned to the tribunal pale, beneath the scales. "They are not reckless," he said grimly. "They are predators. They show us smiles, so we will step closer to the teeth." His warning was dismissed by the arbiter, who still called humans children with matches. But others began to listen, and the fear spread. Hale knew it was working. In his quarters, he stared at the silver locket of his niece, fingers trembling as he opened it for the first time in weeks. The girl's photograph smiled at him, eternal in innocence. "They don't understand you," he whispered. "But they will. Every shot, every hymn, every smile, it's all for you." He closed the locket, tucked it back against his heart, and straightened his uniform. Outside, he was calm. Inside, the fire never dimmed. The humans pressed advantage after advantage, but always with theater. Operation Sunday School saw them distribute children's drawings across abandoned cities. When aliens collected the drawings, each page unfolded into a holomap of troop movements. Operation Red Wagon involved decoy transports painted with flowers, rolling into enemy territory before detonating in perfect synchrony. Each operation was a joke, a story, a message. To the Empire, it was madness. To Hale, it was scripture. At the tribunal, sarcasm laced his politeness. When asked if humans planned to escalate, he smiled faintly. "Oh, escalation is such a clinical word. We prefer crescendo." When a Velthorian accused humans of barbarity, Hale only shrugged. "Funny word, barbarian. It used to mean anyone who didn't speak like you." Careful. Language changes faster than empires. The machine gun gospel became more than a phrase. It became a contagion. Soldiers on distant worlds whispered it before patrols. Alien civilians repeated it in fear. Some said they could hear the rhythm even in silence, as if the very void carried human hymns. The psychological war had become as sharp as bullets, and Hale sharpened it further. In one climactic strike, human forces ambushed an Imperial fleet above Draxo's belt. The aliens deployed with overwhelming numbers, confident of swift victory. Instead, they found themselves facing only static. Their comms filled with distorted human laughter, heavy metal riffs, cutting through static like knives. The music was so loud commanders struggled to issue orders. Amid the chaos, human ships emerged from asteroid shadows, unleashing volleys that tore through the fleet with surgical precision. When the survivors fled, they carried with them a recording of the laughter, looping endlessly, impossible to erase. At the tribunal, fear could no longer be hidden. Delegates muttered in corners, voices hushed. The Ingwan general rose and slammed his clawed fist down. "We must take this threat seriously. They do not fear war. They are becoming war." But the arbiter dismissed him, crystalline light flaring. "They are gnats, nothing more." Hale rose, adjusting his cuffs, his tone still mild. "General," he said, addressing the arbiter with quiet clarity, "gnats don't bury empires, but patience does." He picked up his datapad, sliding it into his coat. "And we've had practice. More than you know." The room stilled. For the first time, even those who mocked him hesitated. In Hale's eyes, they saw not madness but calculation, not grief but weaponized memory. The polite man with coffee and pastries was not a diplomat at all. He was a hunter shepherding prey into the killing fields. That night, as the galaxy replayed footage of another defeated fleet, Hale sat alone in his quarters, staring at the leather book of names. He opened it, marked another line, and whispered softly, "The gospel spreads." Outside the viewport, human fleet stirred, hidden, patient. The music had only just begun. The next morning, the tribunal chamber buzzed with rumors. Some said human spies had infiltrated the very heart of the Empire. Others whispered of a signal embedded in every broadcast, a hidden rhythm no alien could detect. All eyes turned to Hale as he entered, calm as always, carrying only a thermos of coffee. He sat, poured himself a cup, and smiled faintly. "The trouble with Gospels," he said softly, voice carrying despite its gentleness, "is that once you hear them, you can't forget the song." And across the chamber, for the first time, several alien delegates shivered, as if they already heard the drums. The empire shattered not in one great battle, but in 1,000 small cracks that spread until nothing could hold them. Fleets that once marched like clockwork now stumbled, their formations unraveling, their orders lost in static. Whole planets erupted in revolt, emboldened by whispers that humans had turned mourning into fire. The phrase "not afraid of war" spread like a plague, painted on walls, etched into datapads, whispered in markets. It was no longer a declaration, it was contagion, and the empire could not contain it. At the tribunal, panic simmered beneath polished words. Delegates bickered, some demanding annihilation, others pleading for truce. The crystalline arbiter shouted of extermination, its refracted light jagged and fractured. The Ingwan general roared for strategy, warning that every step played into human hands. But their words drowned in the noise of failing authority. They had all felt it, the rhythm of guns, the laughter in static, the hymns that seeped into their dreams. Something deeper than warfare was spreading. A lesson wrapped in grief and iron. Commander Jameson Hale entered the chamber as he always did, calm, courteous, carrying a thermos of coffee. He set it down as though he were simply another man at a morning table, though the galaxy hung on his breath. His gray eyes swept the room, seeing fear now where once there had been arrogance. He poured himself a cup, steam rising, and smiled faintly. "You've been asking the wrong question," he said softly, his voice threading through the uproar. "Not why do humans fight, but why do we keep smiling while we do?" The arbiter slammed a shard hand against the table. "Enough of riddles. Your fleets swarm our borders. Your people infect our channels with songs and lies. You will declare your intentions now." Hale sipped unhurried, as though the world were not collapsing. "Our intentions?" He set the cup down carefully. "To remember our children, and to make sure you do, too." The chamber stilled. For a long moment, even the hum of projection faded. Then the Karken archivist clicked mandibles nervously. "You cannot win through memory alone. Numbers are numbers. Your fleets are too few. Your colonies too fragile." Hale slid a small device onto the table, pressing it once. The walls of the tribunal shimmered with light. Suddenly every screen, every crystal facet, every surface reflected the same image. Children. Not just the ones executed weeks ago, but thousands more, faces, names, ages, all gathered from across Earth. Each image pulsed faintly in rhythm. The rhythm the aliens had been hearing in static. The rhythm they had dismissed as madness. "You've been watching our grief," Hale said gently. "But grief wasn't the only thing we sent. Every broadcast carried more than sorrow. Code, signals, worms." He let the words settle, then leaned forward, eyes steady. "Your fleets run on crystal systems, and crystal sings when it vibrates. Our hymns taught your own ships how to hum. They're humming right now, humming themselves to sleep." As if on cue, alarms wailed across the chamber. Reports flooded in, fleets stalling mid-space, weapons powering down, engines locking. The Velthorian delegates stood in shock, crystalline body flickering with fracturing light. "Impossible," it whispered. You infected the empire with your mourning." "Not mourning," Hale corrected softly. "Memory. You wanted us to weep in silence. Instead, we taught silence to carry knives." The chamber erupted in chaos. Some screamed for countermeasures. Others fled the hall. The Ingwan general remained still, his scaled face unreadable. He looked at Hale across the table and spoke with something like respect. "You planned this from the beginning." Hale's smile was faint, tinged with grief. "We planned at the moment you killed our children. Every candle lit was a code. Every hymn sung was a signal. You thought we were soft. But soft things survive fire. You thought we were afraid. But fear only teaches us patience." Across the galaxy, reports confirmed it. Entire Imperial fleets hung motionless, engines frozen, weapons inert. Planets that had long endured the Empire's cruelty rose up, finding their oppressors suddenly powerless. The Arbiter shrieked with crystalline fury, but its light flickered with cracks. "You dare use art as war? You dare corrupt song into plague." "Art was always war," Hale murmured. "Every painting, Every hymn, every story, it was always preparation. Humans wrap knives in lullabies. We always have. You just weren't listening. Outside the tribunal, the skies filled with broadcasts. Human ships revealed themselves, dozens rising from asteroid belts, moons, hidden stations. They had been there all along, waiting for the signal, disguised as traders and miners. Now they lit engines in unison, their formation sharp, predatory. They moved not like prey, but like wolves circling a wounded beast. The Ingwan general lowered his head, claws clenched. Your people will not stop now. No, Hale said simply. Because we learn from you. Empires think war teaches obedience. But war only teaches memory. You made us remember. And now we'll make sure you never forget. Silence fell heavy. The arbiter trembled, fractures spiderwebbing across its body. The Karken archivist scuttled backward, antennae quivering. The tribunal had never known fear within its walls, but now fear was a guest at every table. It wore the face of a human who drank coffee as though apocalypse were an afterthought. Outside, another report blared. The imperial capital itself was under siege, not by fleets, but by whispers. Songs played through comms, filling the streets. Alien citizens stood frozen, unable to banish the rhythm. It clung to them, a pulse of inevitability. The machine gun gospel had become something larger. It was no longer a human weapon. It was a law of the galaxy. Hale rose, collecting his thermos, his movements unhurried. His voice was quiet, yet it carried to every corner. You thought fear of war would break us. But war is where we remember who we are. We bury our children, then we come for yours. Not with rage, but with patience. Not with chaos, but with hymns. We are not afraid, and now neither are you. The words hung like a blade. The delegates sat stricken, some trembling, some staring with vacant eyes. Hale adjusted his coat, turning toward the exit. The Ingwan general watched him go, speaking low. They will call you monsters. Hale paused, looked back with the faintest trace of a smile. Maybe. But monsters don't write names in books. Monsters forget. We don't. He stepped into the corridor, leaving the chamber in ruins of silence. Behind him, empires collapsed. Ahead of him, humanity's fleets gathered like a storm on the horizon. And though his face was calm, inside he carried the weight of every name written, every child lost, every song sharpened into a knife. In the dark of the corridor, away from alien eyes, he touched the locket at his chest. He whispered to the photograph within, voice breaking just once. It's done, sweetheart. They'll remember you. They'll never stop remembering. He closed it with a trembling hand, then steadied himself, slipping the mask back on. The hum of human engines filled the void, not the scream of fear, but the steady rhythm of inevitability. The machine gun gospel had reached its final verse. The galaxy listened, unable to unhear.